Hello, and welcome to the Best in Fintech podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Dimitri. I'm the founder and CEO of Trellis and Savvy Insurance. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Jimmy Chen. Jimmy is the founder and CEO of Propel, which is the creator of the Providers app, which is used by over 5 million Americans to manage their SNAP benefits and banking. And they're also a Savvy partner. Propel was founded through a fellowship at the Robin Hood Foundation and has raised over $80 million in venture capital funding from investors, including Andreessen Horowitz, Kevin Durant, and Serena Williams. Jimmy is also vice chair of technology at the E-Government Payments Council, which is an industry task force around the future of government payments, was an advisor to President Biden's Tech Transition Committee, and has testified in front of Congress on that topic of modernizing America's safety net. Prior to Propel, Jimmy led product teams at LinkedIn and Facebook. So, Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Daniel.
For sure. So, let's start with Propel. What is Propel, if you're explaining it to the uninitiated?
Propel helps people who have low income in the United States to manage their government benefits and money. We're a technology company that builds a free smartphone app called Providers that helps people to know exactly how much they have left on their EBT cards. EBT is a government benefit that's state administered. It's a debit card that state governments issue that has a variety of different program payments on it, but the most common of them is the food stamp program, which is officially known as SNAP. So there are about 40 million Americans each month who receive a SNAP benefit on an EBT card. It gets direct deposited onto the card once a month. And when I started Propel back in 2014, one of the things I learned is that most people call the 1-800 number on the back of the card to check their balance, and that there didn't exist a much better way for someone to know how much they had left on their card. So our product, our first product at least, was really kind of like a mobile banking app, but for the EBT card. So replace the 1-800 number with a free app that lets you see your balance and your transaction history, that takes some of the things that have been de-risked in fintech and in consumer software and sort of applies it to the food stamp program and to the ways that people use the social safety net. That's sort of how we got started. We thought of EBT balance checking as an acquisition hook or as a wedge. It's the reason why people download and engage in the app really frequently. But that we see the kind of the bulk of our value add and our business really focused on, once we've acquired this consumer and once they're using our app regularly, what else can we do for them? This is a consumer who is using the social safety net, is most likely a parent, is most likely someone who's under the age of 35. And we're thinking about what are the different ways we can help that person to improve their financial health.
So I typically think of founding stories as the intersection of capability, meaning opportunity to create value. How did you discover this opportunity to create value for people?
Yeah, as you mentioned, before Propel, I was a product manager at Facebook, and before that, I was a PM at LinkedIn. But before all of that, I was a kid who grew up in a loving household that was also at various times food insecure and had a bunch of different financial challenges. Went to college on a financial needs scholarship, and then after I got into tech, started thinking a lot about how people in tech solve the problems that they understand. And that people who are tech founders or have the resources to fund a tech company generally are looking for tech companies that solve problems that they deeply personally understand. Just so it turns out that those folks are probably unlikely to have experience with poverty or, extreme financial need. Just from a demographic standpoint, it just seems like where we are today in the tech industry is that the builders of technology companies are not the same as the users of the technology. And case in point, in 2022, most Americans, including most people who use government benefits or the food stamp program, have a smartphone that can access the internet. But very few of them have the resources to start a tech company to solve their own problems. And so for me, the journey for Propel was thinking, how do we take the playbook of Silicon Valley tech and of the resources and skills that have been proven out to work in the technology industry, but apply them to the daily experiences of low-income families. And so sort of with that broad theoretical thesis that I moved to Brooklyn in 2014 to do a program called Blue Ridge Labs, which is part of the Robin Hood Foundation, focused on talking to low-income Americans, prototyping new software solutions, and trying to see if you can build something that meets someone's needs.
Cool. How did you know that you were onto something?
Yeah, it's funny. We actually, when we came up with the idea for EBT balance checking, which was, hey, it seems crazy that people call this 1-800 number. We should build a mobile banking app that's kind of like Mint or kind of like any other, the Bank of America or Chase or Wells Fargo app and just offer it for free on the App Store. This is my co-founders and I super excitedly went into a few grocery stores to go talk to people who are going to spend their SNAP benefits to ask them, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if you had this app? We asked 10 people if they wanted this app, and 7 of them said no. And we were like, well, shoot, I guess no one wants this after all. I guess it was a bad idea. People said things like, hey, that sounds nice, but like I already know how to call the 1-800 number. I'm used to it. Or they would say
Wow.
like, I've got the 1-800 number on speed dial. Like I don't need a new app. Like I don't want an app for that. And so we then debated as co-founders, is this something that we want to still try or not? And actually, there was an ethos that I learned at Facebook that I respect a lot and carry forward into Propel, which is that code wins arguments. This idea of like, you can debate about whether people want a thing or not, but the best way to find out if people actually want the thing is to build it and to put it in front of them. And so credit to my co-founder and CTO, who essentially spent a weekend building the first prototype of the Propel app. Put it out on the Android platform, and we were able to see if anyone wanted to use it. And I think the reason we decided to push ahead with that, even though people had told us explicitly that this wasn't an app that they wanted, was because we were sort of thinking about the context in which people were answering the question. That we often, people were telling us, no, I don't want to be hassled by another thing. But the context for them was that they were literally walking through a grocery store. They had like 3 kids with them. The kids are like being kids, pulling food off the shelves, and their cart's going to and they're probably late for whatever it is that they're going to do after this. And so what they were telling us was like, convenience is really important to me. And I don't have the mental bandwidth to go think about changing my routine or adding a new app to it. And so the way that I interpreted that was, it's not that they necessarily don't want this app. It's that they really, really value having the extra mental bandwidth, having convenience, having things that save them time. And if we can get someone to try this app just the first time, and we can prove to them that it's actually way more efficient than calling a 1-800 number, and that can give us a reason to like have a key spot in their phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what played out. We were proven right just through the data. To your point about how did we know it was working? The answer is we launched the app, and it was a pretty janky, crappy app in the early days. It didn't have a design or a logo. It wasn't really it like looked kind of lame, but we had a number of people keep using it. We had people tell their friends about it. We had people email us and say, hey, I've been using your app for a month. It doesn't have feature XYZ. Can you please build it that way? And started to feel the pull of like, oh, it does seem like this is really resonating with people. And despite how early stage it is and how unpolished it is, we've got people who are demanding it.
Wow. So how did you, once you discovered that there was an audience, how did you find that audience and get them to be, to try it out?
The first couple thousand users were because all Facebook employees get some ad credit to spend on the Facebook ads system to like test it out. And I had something like 10 friends who still worked at Facebook. And so I called up my friends and say, hey, will you donate me your ad credit? They get a couple $1,000 in Facebook ad credit that we used to run promotions back when we didn't have any cash as a company. And that's how we sort of got our start. We ended up with a few thousand people using the app through that. We also did a bunch of like, standard like going to places to hustle kind of thing. Like you'd stand outside the food stamp office in Brooklyn, or we'd go to a grocery store in a low income neighborhood and try to catch people who are about to check out and calling the 1-800 number, like those types of places, handing out paper slips or trying to tell people about an app. Those were the ways that we kind of bootstrapped it in the early days to get things going. As things started to grow, really the biggest channel for us is organic growth through either word of mouth or SEO. That the more people who use the app, the more of a reputation it gets on the App Store and Play Store, which allows us to rank higher on searches, which makes it feel more credible to someone who's never heard of it before but finds it on Google.
So the name Propel, was that the original name or a name that came later? And what motivates you to have sort of a different name for the company than the product, and to have those multiple names that you're managing. Is there a story there?
Yeah. I'm super curious for your answer to this for
I
your own
know,
company
right?
too,
I'm in the
because I
same
think
boat.
we've had
Yeah.
parallel paths. Yeah, yeah. So we named the company Propel because we didn't know how many products we were going to build. I don't think we ever intended it to be like a studio or anything, but the idea was maybe we'll build multiple products for different use cases or different government programs or something else. Um, and we recently, as of last year, renamed our app to Providers because we started to realize that we wanted to be an app that helped people with more than just their EBT cards. That while we started off as sort of a GovTech play focused on EBT and the SNAP program, and talking to our users over the years, we realized that what we really wanted to be was a fintech company focused on the wallets and the financial health of low-income families. And for those families, the government is a major part of their financial life, but for no one is it the entirety of their financial life. That our users who receive government benefits also have checking accounts and prepaid cards. They have credit scores and credit cards. They have debt. They have all the different types of challenges that Americans do. And that by focusing on government programs, we were only ever going to see a slice of someone's life. And so we rebranded the app to Providers, and we launched our debit card as a way to communicate to the people that we serve that it's not about EBT anymore. It's about what the point of the money is. And for a lot of our users, the vast majority of our users are parents. About 80% of our users have a child under the age of 18 at home. It's about providing for your family and maintaining a sense of pride. And so Providers was the name of the app because it came from how our users really see themselves as good providers for their children and for their family. And so, the way that we kind of sequence things now is Providers is the consumer-facing brand. It's the one that we do all of our marketing through. It is the brand that is known to anyone who uses the app. And Propel is the corporate brand that I think is going to kind of fade away a little bit into the background because it's not necessarily the name that our users or anyone else needs to know about, but that oftentimes we do corporate communications and talk about us as an employer or us as a government partner, and those come through the Propel voice.
Got it. So when you're alphabet sized or meta sized, then you'll already have that Propel corporate name ready to go, and you can still have Facebook as just a piece or Google as just a piece of your enterprise. But so you're future proofed for now.
Dress for the job you want,
right?
Not for the job you have. Right?
Exactly. Trellis was not the same story, by the way. Trellis was because I started Trellis thinking will be like a Plaid for insurance, and that was the whole aim. And I got forced into building Savvy because I couldn't find any customers for Trellis, and so I was going around InsurTech and Fintech saying, I have this incredible insurance data API. Won't you please license it? And everyone said, no, thank you. And so I said, well, what if I could build you some value creation down funnel where I use the data to help the user and it's automated recommendations too. And they said, I guess if you did that, then I could work with you. And so we built Savvy thinking that we would flip Savvy one day and just go back to just doing Trellis, thinking that the Savvy piece was just a commodity and the Trellis thing was the interesting piece. What we discovered as we were building Savvy is that there was actually a lot of work to do there that no one was doing exactly the way that we envisioned it. Like being able to text and email and talk on the phone with your insurance team. Everyone was just doing phone and online, but not email and text and omnichannel. As a basic example, there's more complex examples, but so as we were forced into this business and doing it from a ground up, sort of that naive approach of, I guess if I have to do this thing, like, okay, fine, like, how do I go do this thing? And then we discovered actually the way that we did it from the ground up was pretty innovative. What kinds of people join Propel? What drives people to join Propel? And what kinds of people are you looking to have joining Propel?
Yeah, I've learned over the years that you can have a bunch of values written down, but the challenge of actually interviewing and crafting your team around values really forces you to be pretty minimalist in the number of values you can really interview for and select for. And I think I found that at Propel, the values that have really resonated for us at the end of the day and that are true of everyone on the team is first a really strong motivation by our mission. That people can be motivated in their work by a number of different factors, and there's no values judgment about which one you're motivated by, whether it's your personal growth or compensation or status or impact on the world or any of those number of things. But for us at Propel, we want to be the best employer in the world for people who care about building financial services to strengthen America's social safety net.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty specific mission, but it's one that, people in some walks really resonate with, and we want to be the place where those folks all want to work. The second value that we found is really important is people who are analytical and who are quantitative in their decision making, in their communication, in their abilities. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a mathematician, but it means you need to take an analytical approach to the work that you do. And really, it's those two things, mission alignment and analytical, that I think are the best descriptors of who our team is. That we need to be a team that is motivated by the right things and wants to build the right type of business, and that has the skill sets and sort of the drive to make that happen.
Cool. That's an incredible distillation, just down to 2. I mean, normally people think you got to go all the way up to 3 or 7. I mean, if you look at like a Twilio, they have like 7. So down to 2 is pretty amazing focus.
I think it's not that the 2 is complete. It's that the 2 is the, like, from an 80-20 perspective, right. It allows us to simplify the mental model of, like, who's the type of teammate that we're looking for here, and what does everyone truly need to have in common?
Yes. Great. Have you thought about, that thought around culture add versus culture fit? Is that something that's been top of mind for you? It's kind of a bit of a raging debate almost in a way in the startup world. How have you reconciled those two different philosophies around hiring? One being like, let's get people who, conform, and the other that there's maybe a balance between conforming, but also being different can be a good thing. But like being different is not always a good thing, because sometimes they're different in a bad way, right? Like that's a jerk. So how do you think about that balance and tension?
Yeah, I think that diversity is good in all things except for values, where you want consistency.
Yeah.
Right? You want everyone on your team to share the same core values, but you want to be open to whatever way people think you should get there. And there's going to be a range of opinions on that. It includes diversity in all the traditional characteristics of what people might think of around race and age and, sexual orientation or gender, any number of other things. But it also means, like if we can achieve sort of what I'm talking about, it's all about finding people who share the same core values, but who differ across all of the other characteristics. And then that is what allows us to form a team that isn't all on the same page all the time, right? We don't actually want people to agree on all topics. We want people to bring fresh points of view and to challenge and stretch each other, but that for whom there is no debate about the central value. Like, I don't want people to debate, is our mission good or bad? Because if you've opted in to work here, you probably care about the mission in the first place, right? So I think it's that that fundamental alignment that allows us to safely disagree and have a huge range of opinions and backgrounds on all the other things.
Yeah. So you had this idea, your discovery really, that managing your government benefits was stuck in the Stone Ages a little bit. It was taxing on people who could really not afford that time, and were not well positioned to have this kludginess in their financial access. And it was sort of discrepant with our vision for helping people get on their feet and take care of themselves. We had a system that was not allowing people to take care of themselves. They were busy with basic logistics. But you solved the problem. You launched the app. You found a way somehow to, like, I don't even know where you get this data from, but you digitized access to this account balance information. But you're done, right? Like, mission accomplished, hooray! Like, so what's next? I mean, you've rebranded to providers. You've got your users. I mean, how much more is there left to do?
Yeah, you can think of Propel as solving a pretty small and well-defined problem on behalf of users in order to have the right to solve a much bigger problem. The small problem is, how do you check your EBT balance? And the much bigger problem is that poverty in this country is sticky. That the social safety net is funded by hundreds of billions of dollars, but doesn't work as well as it could. And that low-income Americans who experience a financial shock or are born into challenging circumstances often spend a generation trying to escape those circumstances. And so where we are at Propel is that we've built essentially the acquisition hook, We've built a platform used by more than 5 million families across the country each month to manage their EBT cards and their banking. And we've already started, helping people who use our platform navigate a bunch of other challenges that they face in their lives, whether it's getting cheaper home internet or saving money on groceries or applying for a job or buying car insurance. We've started to see ourselves as a distribution channel to help people solve the variety of financial challenges that they have in their lives. But I think there's still, it's such a deep set of problems and such a deep and unclear kind of source of like what the actual answer is, that we've got a long ways to go in that front. So a few ways that we can grow really on how broad we're serving people and also how deep we're serving people. We're serving currently 5 million people across the country each month. There are about 60 million Americans who receive food stamp benefits at some point during a calendar year. So we've got a long ways to go to reach the total demographic that we could reach. And that while we now serve people across benefits and banking, that we serve only a minority of our users on our debit card, and that there's a lot more work we can do to make our debit card really uniquely valuable to someone who's using the social safety net. We think that we can build a debit program that is unique in this country because it's exclusively focused on people who get food stamps, and that set of characteristics, that starting point to think about user pain points and demographics and needs, will result in our product looking pretty different at maturity, and getting more of our 5 million users to be seeing this as sort of the core of their financial life is a big next step for us. At the end of the day, where we're trying to build with Propel on kind of a long-term time horizon is an organization kind of like AARP, but focused on low-income families.
Fascinating.
With this idea that we want to be able to serve people across their financial lives. We want to be able to make recommendations and build products that help our users navigate not just their benefits, not just their banking, but their entire financial lives. And similar to AARP, we are squarely and perpetually focused on a demographic. For us, it's low-income Americans, which we currently define as people who earn under $40,000 per year. But by choosing a narrow slice of the demographic to focus in on, it allows us to go broad in terms of what we do for that person.
Mm-hmm. What do you want your future and current members or users or clients to feel about Propel? Is it trust, or is it excitement? Is it, how do you, is it like a little, is it more of a parent, or is it more of an agnostic tool? Like, are you going to have people that they can talk to? Or are you always going to stay technology? Like, what do you want that relationship to be as you mature into that vision?
The fundamental thing that we want to offer people who use our products is breathing room. It's this feeling like everything's going to be okay. It's the feeling like I know the information. I know how the things are changing. I know when my next paycheck is coming. It's the feeling of certainty about money. And that in a lot of our research and our conversations with our user base, that is was one of the core stressors of being low income in this country, is just you're surrounded by uncertainty left and right. Yeah. Uncertainty of when your deposit's going to arrive, uncertainty of how much the electricity bill is going to be, uncertainty about where inflation is going to drive grocery prices to. And that, for someone whose margins are really small, having more financial certainty is what helps you understand whether you're going to make it through the month every month or not. And so we want to build an app that creates more financial certainty for our users so that they can take a breath. They can feel like they've got the space to relax. They can feel like they've got the space to provide for their families, and that they can do it all while maintaining a sense of pride. That's the other side of the reality of poverty in the United States, is that it is a day-to-day experience of putting aside your own personal pride to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And that our users often navigate these really tough personal choices about, do I go stand in this government office for 2 hours, or do I go without food for the next day? Like, well, this is not a great choice, but I guess I'll put aside my pride and go stand in the office, right? And I think that doesn't have to be the way that things work. Mm-hmm. That the value of technology is that we can take a lot of these things that were previously challenging for pride, or that made people feel like they were less than, and make them feel modern. Mm-hmm. That's the great part about software, is that you can build a nice app or you can build a crappy app. It doesn't necessarily take more money to build a nice app. It's all pixels on a screen. And offering people those types of really convenient and modern experiences is a way that we can build more space into people's lives.
If someone joins Propel today, what are their initial focus going to be on? What's coming up this year, going into next year that you're most excited about?
I mentioned our debit card and this kind of basic rethinking that we are doing of how does the banking system work for Americans who use the social safety net. That historically, Americans who use the social safety net are served by either traditional banks because they happen to be on the street corner and you can walk into a bank branch and open up a checking account, or by prepaid cards. And the prepaid, industry is primarily is distributing cards at tax time or as the way that you get a payday loan or something else. But those are sort of the two options that most consumers had available to them if they wanted to not transact in cash, but wanted to, have a plastic card that they could swipe at the store. Both of those options have historically been quite expensive for low-income families. We kind of run into this thing where the more money you have, the more money you get from the financial services system, right? If you are high income, you get a fancy credit card that gives you 2% cash back on your purchases. If you're low income, you use a debit card that not only you don't get anything back, you pay them $12 a month for the service of not having to use cash. And just how backwards that is. It's kind of a regressive tax on people that the lower income you are, the more expensive your financial products are. And so thinking through the economics of how we flip that, how can we invent from scratch a financial product and financial system that actually puts low income families as the core customer, not an incidental customer. It's not someone who just wanders into your branch. It is the thing, like this is the demographic that this is built to serve. How would we structure the fees, the kind of fee structure? How would we structure the cost side to make sure that we're able to provide the service in an economically sustainable way? And that's a lot of what we're working on right now as a company. As we continue to iterate and improve on the provider's card, the card that's already been in market for people for about a year now, and to kind of rethink, what that could be for people. I think the ambition behind it is quite large, and so we've got a lot of work to do to make that happen.
Wow. So you really earned. I think what you're saying is you found a problem that strikes the core of a lot of people to the extent that they were then willing to go download and onboard to a totally new app, and you've earned a conversation and a place in their lives that you can now use to create even more positive impact for them. That's outside of your, or that's adjacent to maybe what your EBT balance is. It's the rest of the financial picture, serving those needs in areas like so debit card product means that's your non-food or your non-EBT economic means. And there's you said you're also saving money on people's bills, like utility bills,
right?
Already, wow! So you're doing a lot of things already, and so you're going to be making those things even better.
Yeah, there's a story about Propel in the early days, in the founding days of the company. We spent a lot of time at the food stamp office in Brooklyn, just talking to people, learning more about the program, trying to understand how it all works. And one of the things that I was surprised by going into that office is that every time you walk into the office, there are a number of people with folding tables outside the food stamp office in Brooklyn. And they are waiting to talk to people who are walking in and out of the office. They are from cell phone companies and utility companies and Medicaid companies, but they're all trying to reach people who are verified as receiving a government program of some sort and just trying to reach them. And it just turns out that that's the best way historically to talk to someone is you put up a table on the sidewalk next to the food stamp office. This is true of a lot of food stamp offices in New York City. And so that seems to me incredibly inefficient. And that if they were willing to have an employee stand on the street and talk to people while holding a clipboard, could we help them reach 100x more people if we could do it through a digital format? And if we could do it through a digital format, could we actually make it much cheaper to reach someone who is low income and solve the distribution problem for other companies? And that if we can do that, does that mean that more companies will end up building things that actually make sense for this demographic, that are designed for this demographic because now they're reachable, right? So I think in the long term, that's what I'm excited about, is helping to address the distribution challenge for services faced by low income Americans and to make them easier to serve.
Wow. So you've digitized that row of tables outside of the office. It's a virtual mall, outdoor
That's right.
mall.
It's the digital
This is the
sidewalk.
digital sidewalk. Awesome. You can have even a little avatar for your Easter egg where you walk down the aisle and you peruse all the little tables. Fantastic. So as we come to a close on the show here, one question I really like to ask, particularly the most successful founder CEOs, clearly you've done something right. When you look back on the way you've run the company, what do you attribute in terms of inspirations? Are there books that you read or people that you worked for or the people that you just worked with or that you read about that, inspired your view on how to run a company that has translated into the way that you've been growing Propel?
It's really been about my teammates. It's been about my co-founders first and foremost, but the rest of the team at Propel they're the folks who really taught me how to be successful in this job. That just something that I know about myself is that I'm much better in teams than as an individual. That I was never the best individual problem solver or mathematician or computer programmer, but that I excelled in team formats because it allowed me to build off of the enthusiasm of other people. It allowed me to help other people succeed. That at the end of the day, that's what I'm personally passionate about, is helping other people be successful. And so once the Propel team started growing, we were 3 people, we were 5 people, we were 7 people. That's when it really felt like things started to gain more of a sense of momentum because, the team itself started to come together and to become more than the sum of its parts. Like each of us were doing more than we could alone. And that is super, super exciting and energizing to me. So if I think about, what I've learned along the journey, it's really about who you surround yourself with and what you can learn from those people.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Jimmy. We really appreciate your time. If anyone who's listening wants to learn more about Propel and the team, where should they go?
Joinpropel.com is our website.
Terrific. Thanks again.